Chapter 1. The House. April 17th, 2017. It sat silently atop the hill. It drew its breath in the stillness, and time shifted. The great white eye of the moon filtered down through the surrounding trees, giving the wispy fingers of mist that crawled along its foundation a silvery glow. Ringed by acres of forested land, the house stood alone in the night. Its windows looked out into the darkness and back into time. It had the luxury of patience because time had no meaning to it. Within, floorboards creaked under the weight of formless shadows that moved along the walls, leaving swirling motes of dust in their wake. The echo of a baby's cry rose and then fell away in a single tick of the great hall clock that no longer had form. The laughter of many voices mixed with the tinkling of glassware and rattled through the downstairs rooms. A cough of a noise, heard and then gone. The sweet smell of alcohol passed into the acrid, coppery smell of blood. Unheard footsteps padded deliberately towards the master bedroom. The knob turned and the heavy door swung inward and then closed with a solid, heavy thump. A flicker of a candle flame lit the eye of the window and disappeared, unseen by any but the trees that stood sentinel outside. Muffled cries of fear and despair filtered through the closed bed curtains and, like the candle flame, died away in an instant. The steps leading down into the dark, dank hollow of its being held their memory. They groaned under the descent of thumping boots no human ear could hear. What walked in those boots held no heart within its chest, but bestowed upon the house a heart that would continue to beat, a heart that would long after pump the blood of malice from which it had taken shape. It would pump its evil and hatred through the hollow arteries of its halls and stairwells and vents and chimneys. Its unheard rhythm beat against its walls and ceilings and floors. Its formless chambers expanded with each beat, shaping and reshaping the house and the time it held within. Night watched over the house. It saw the flickers in its window eyes and heard the rustle of its breath along its eaves and gables. It blanketed in its velvet blackness and held it safe upon the hill. When the first rays of dawn shed their thin orange lines through the wavering branches of the trees, the house exhaled and settled itself to sleep. And when it did, 77 yards away, hidden in the thick of the forest, an old well, long disused, spat out a plume of dust and shadow from its circular mouth. A sigh of stillness and repose issued through a stone trachea, and all that stirred or walked within fell into timeless slumber. Aroused by some ill-defined foreboding, a remnant thread of a nightmare that clawed at the back of his head and brought sweat to his brow and his heart to a gallop, the old man struggled from his bed and made his way out back. The early morning sky sported no more than the simplest brushstrokes of orange, the sun still well below the tree line. He shambled out to the edge of the porch and turned his gaze northwest. It was there. He couldn't see it for the intervening forest land, but it was there. The old Wickersham place.
"Dad, blame it, Walcott, you loathsome old fool."
He slammed his frail fist down on the porch rail.
"I never should have done it. I should have let it rot and crumble all to hell. I should have never signed them papers."
He shook his head and let out a long, low sigh of self-reproach.
"It's all stirred up again. I can feel it. I can—"
A tall column of thick black rose above the trees in the distance and fell silently out of sight again. The old man wiped a tear from the corner of his eye with a shaky hand, turned and went back into the house. He poured a cup of coffee and worked himself into a seat at the kitchen table.
"I'm sorry. I'm so by God sorry for you folks. But this all has to end. I just can't do it anymore."
He hung his head and sobbed.